So during the pandemic, everyone was home. Everyone was sitting on their couch, on their phone, just ordering things, not going out to restaurants. So they had some disposable income, right? What are companies struggling with the most now to maintain growth, right? To maintain, their path to profitability? What technologies do they need to invest in to compete with the likes of Amazon? It's in this post-pandemic era where, people are now spending their money on vacations and other things. And, it might be a little tougher with consumer spend.
Yeah. So I think one of the kind of overarching considerations is starting to, reevaluate some assumptions that might have been made or built up over the course of, years during the pandemic at this point. I think one really interesting example or dynamic there is with pricing. So throughout COVID, 2020, 2021, acquisition costs were increasing, they were higher. Freight was, a critical contributor to higher prices, but you know, willingness to pay was also high. We had stimulus checks were coming in, savings were relatively healthy, so you could set a higher price and really not worry too much about it. But now demand is more elastic, and I think again pricing is an interesting example where there is likely incremental revenue left on the table by not experimenting with pricing strategies, and that ties into some interesting themes around merchants are spending money on software that and prioritizing projects that drive ROI, clear ROI. And I think again pricing is kind of an interesting like archetype for that, because if you experiment or A/B test what you're listing your products at and you're finding there's incremental revenue, it's really easy to justify that spend, of course. But in general, their contribution margins need to be positive on the first purchase. Now you can't wait for the third, fourth, fifth purchase event to break even on that cost. People are going elsewhere. So pricing and ROI on software spending, I think, is a big theme. Another critical tailwind, I think this is longer term as well, is omni-channel first and various marketplace enablement tools that just increase discoverability. Again, shifting from direct to consumer as a business in and of itself towards direct to consumer as a channel is, I think, structural. And then kind of similar to what we were just talking about, reverse logistics, highly expensive, definitely an opportunity to improve there, and that's closely tied to re-commerce and improving some or driving incremental revenue with resale programs. Lots of innovation happening on that side of the coin as well. And then again, kind of the overarching consideration there is, we're seeing a priority on ROI positive projects, less, these huge migrations and services that are, technically complex and time consuming. Competing with Amazon, I think, is a little bit of another matter entirely. But I think one theme that's really interesting there is like the things that Amazon, by virtue of being Amazon, places in our kind of operational assumptions that may not hold in reality, or for everybody else, I should say. And I think free shipping is one of those examples. I had another webinar with a company called Intelligems, which is a pricing tool, and they were talking about in the aggregate, they've run thousands of price tests across all of these merchants, and finding that there is incremental revenue by, in some cases, not offering free shipping. But that's an assumption that we kind of build up because, hey, Amazon does it.
Right.
So I think those are some of the, again, long answer there, but some of the considerations that I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's plenty of consumers out there that will go on a site and see a shipping charge and just hit pause and go to the next site. But maybe there's something wrong with that theory, right? You poke holes in it.
Yeah, there certainly are people who will bounce, right, and just go to the next brand that does offer free shipping. But again, across in the aggregate and the macro, we can see that the people who do still want the product and stick around and can add $5, $7, $10 to an order can in some cases make up for the smaller cohort of people who do bounce. But
Right.
It's all part of that experimentation, because in some cases if you're just kind of again assuming that supply or demand or price is inelastic and don't ever look at it, then I think that's where the pitfall really is.
Right. Yeah, and certainly Amazon is a tough one to compete with, making it so easy to order products, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the investment in technology is huge, and having a strategy around each aspect of a sales cycle
Yeah.
There's just so much that goes into it. So it's interesting to hear.
Most
So
definitely.
we're entering Q4 this year. Typically the busiest quarter for, our brands. What can make, Q4 can make or break a year for an e-com. What is your prediction with respect to consumer spend, companies maintaining growth, hitting their budgets? Are we going to see a continued struggle for D2Cs in Q4?
Yeah, so yeah, definitely a busy time of year. Like I said, I was a PM back in the day, and I sometimes still break out in a cold sweat when you kind of are staring down the barrel at Black Friday and whatnot. But so I get that. Um, you know, Again, yeah, seasonality to be sure baked in, and Q4 can absolutely make or break. I think some of the structural shifts around, um, you know, funding for D2C and competition are unlikely to abate in the near term. But in general, a couple of things that I'm keeping an eye on. Excess savings that accumulated throughout the pandemic reached over $2 trillion, $2.1 trillion. And that excess savings has been drawn down considerably. Last number I saw was about $500 billion. So that liquid cash still exists in the economy. I think, obviously that can break one of two ways. One being, consumers can prop up Q4 a little bit with that excess, with those remaining savings. The other being, of course, that, as you kind of watch those accounts dwindle, that you become a little more conservative. The various retailer and merchandising surveys I've been looking at point to some slightly deteriorating expectations. So a couple figures: over 40% of merchants are ordering less inventory. Over 70 expect consumers to cut back, and just about 70 expect to discount heavily. And it's elevated interest rates suggest a pivot away from some higher ticket items. So overall, again, we're optimistic about the growth trajectory of e-commerce. We expect it to account for a growing portion of all retail transactions. Holiday spending figures, I'm looking at something in the order of 250 billion to 275 billion. But again, certainly a lot of dynamics to keep in mind, and all sorts of nuance around specific product categories and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it right. There's just a ton to consider, right, when you're thinking about Q4. But we're hoping Q4 shapes up for our brands, our clients, and only time will tell, right?
Yeah, indeed, it's going to be here. It's going to be here and done faster than than we expect. It always is. But yeah,
Right.
certainly a lot to keep a pulse on.
Yeah, and I would love to chat after the season and see how the year went and give some thoughts again. So, really appreciate your time. Thank you. Always looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah. The pleasure is mine, and we'll have to keep me honest on the predictions.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I definitely can follow up on that.
Yeah, if any listeners want to connect directly with Eric or myself, feel free to reach out directly, and appreciate everyone's time.